Hey everybody, welcome to the Behr Essentials with me, your host Dani Behr. Very excited to announce today's very special guest, the one and only, and he really is the one and only, Bruce Buffer. Hey Bruce.
Danny, appreciate it. The one and only Danny.
Yeah, I was going to say you should actually announce me since you are the king of announcers. If you were to announce me, what would it sound like?
Presenting the one, the only, the most beautiful podcaster in the world. A woman of many faces, a woman who fulfills many dreams. The champion of the world, Dani Behr.
That's classic. I'm going to use that for my voicemail message.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Daddy can't come to the phone right now because she's in the octagon choking somebody out. But at the beat, it's time. Leave your name, telephone number, and she'll call you back.
I was going to say, people must ask you everywhere you go, can you do some messages? Can you do a birthday message? And I get that all the time too, but you must be inundated.
I'm inundated, but you know what? It's a business, Danny. It's people go in. I'm in the top 10 Cameo filmmaker, video people for Cameo, which is an amazing app. It's unbelievable how that works. But at my website, brucebuffer.com, people write me all the time for voice messages, birth of babies, championship introductions, weddings. I do about 5 or more weddings a week,
Wow.
audios and videos. And I do the videos in a tuxedo in front of a green screen, and we'll put the emblem behind us if it's, an arena scene, or if it's a business that wants, a business video for their social media or blah, 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 blah. It's an amazing business, but the voice messages, yeah, I get a lot of those.
It's fun. It's fun.
Oh, the
So,
reason I
as
say
you
it's a
know,
business- I'm sorry to interrupt you. The reason I say it's a business because partial proceeds go to animal, children, and military charities.
oh, I love that. I love that. So, everybody, if you want your big announcement, go to brucebuffer.com. Well, actually, it's letsrumble.com, right?
No,
That's the
no, that's
correct way.
Michael's site. My brother, my legendary
Yep.
brother, Michael
Yep.
Buffer. No, go to brucebuffer.com.
brucebuffer.com. Okay. I just remember Let's Rumble because that's on your email. What,
I also have
as you know, us,
brucebuffer.com too. That's my fault.
as you know, us Brits love to shorten a name or give nicknames to everybody we know that we find endearing. Are you ever Brucey? Are you BB? Are you Buffy? Like, what are the nicknames your buddies have for you over the years? And what does your
My
mum call you, more importantly?
mom always calls me Bruce, or some endearing term. My friends call me Buff. That's my nickname, Buff. And then, girlfriends and people in close might say Buffy, Boo Boo, Brew.
Boo Boo
Depends on
Buffy.
the mood, depends on the setting, Danny.
I love it. I love it. I mean, you really are, besides you and your brother, I can't think of any other sports announcers. And I mean, I'm a host, you're a host, but being a sports announcer it really is such a unique job. Let's
Yeah,
go way back. How did you get into it? What were you doing before? Give us the history, the backstory, because it's so I find it such an interesting and compelling career you've had. So I'm super
thank you.
stoked to know how it all started.
I appreciate that. I did write my biography, which was released about 10 years ago, called It's Time. And I go into not major, but I go into depth about it because I wanted to make it not just, it's 25-30% about the UFC. It's a story about father, mother relationship, uh, success, failure, but a motivating story for entrepreneurs because I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. I had my first company, my first corporation at 19. I went to college. I was going to study business. I wanted to be an actor. I studied acting um, in the Dallas
Wait, I
Theater
got
of
to
Art.
stop you there. I got to stop you there. So, where did you grow up? Where was home for you as a child? Where was your childhood home?
According to my dad, I was conceived in Las Vegas. I was dropped off in Tulsa, Oklahoma, meaning we only lived there for about 9 months after I was born. Then we went to Dallas, Texas, where I had a formative 2, 3, 4 years. And then we went to what I consider my hometown, which is Philadelphia, and lived there. All my relatives are from Philadelphia. My mother was born there. My brother was born there. And I lived there for 6, 7 years and then went back to Texas for a couple years and then back to Philadelphia for 2 or 3 years. And at the age of 15, my dad, who was working as vice president and head of like Fortune 500 companies, that's why we would move. He'd get a job here or there. He said, well, first he said, we're moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, right? I said, oh, okay, great. And then 2 weeks before we're supposed to move, he says, no, we're moving to Malibu, California. Oh, really?
Big
Okay,
difference.
that's a big difference.
And how
And
old
then
were
we
you
moved
at this point?
I
How
was
old were you? Which
15.
is a hard age to move. You've got all your friends, you've got all your peers. That's a hard age to move, but I guess you're used to it, right? If you've done a lot of it.
I was used to it changing schools and stuff. It's a hard thing to move, but my brother was a senior in high school when he moved, and I was a sophomore. So it wasn't that hard for me because I was able to go into school with everybody else and make new friends. It's harder going being a senior going into school.
Mm.
And so we moved to Malibu, and I get there and I'm at the beach, and we weren't rich, we were middle class. We went broke as a family 2 or 3 times and worked together to come out of it, which taught me a lot about my entrepreneur attitude and focus. And we lived in Trancas Canyon, about a mile or half mile from the beach. And all the people lived on the beach. All the rich people lived on the beach. The actors. Steve McQueen, the famous actor, was one of my good friends for the last 6 years of his life. I surfed in front of his house every day, and his son is still a best friend of mine. But when I got out there, I saw the waves, which I watched surfing in Biarritz, France, when I was 11. When my parents took me to Europe, which was a great thing to do for a young child to learn and observe and learn about life. And I saw surfing, and I said, someday I was living in Philadelphia, and I go, someday I'm going to do that, right? My dream come true. I moved out to Malibu. The waves are happening. I wanted to learn how to surf. I used to go to Atlantic City. There wasn't too many blonde girls like you running around, brunettes, and all of a sudden, all these beautiful blonde Baywatch types are running out of the ocean in bikinis, and I'm like, I really like this place, and my
Dad,
hormones
we're
are
not
flying.
moving again.
Not moving again. My hormones are flying, and I kid around. I say, all I could think about was losing my virginity and learning how to surf. And I learned how to surf first, and I became Baywatch. Everything followed its natural progression, so it's okay.
That's awesome. So you learn a lot from your dad being this serial entrepreneur, as in moving around, adapting to change,
Yeah,
the variety of life. Did you get a lot of that from your father?
a lot of it. He was a role model for me. He was very tough. He's a real man's man. He's a combination of like John Wayne, Steve McQueen, and Errol Flynn rolled up into one. He'd walk in a room and so charismatic. Women wanted to meet him, men wanted to meet him, men wanted to fight him. He just had this amazing charisma. He was a Marine for 13 years. He never graduated high school, self taught, read 1 or 2 books every single week. He's probably a borderline genius IQ, um, just the way he was. And he was just funny and just a real man's man. He probably actually introduced me to more girls and got me in more fighting situations than any best friend I ever had. He would not take any crap from anybody, but he comes from the old days. He's the old breed.
Mm.
That's not the way you can be today. It's a different world.
Yeah. And
Even
so
though I'm great.
you have your brother who you moved with to Malibu that you grew up with, and you have a sister as
Brian,
well,
my brother Brian.
brother Brian, and you have a sister?
No, I call her my sister.
Oh, you call her your sister.
Right, my business partner, Kristen. We've
Right,
worked side by side for 25 years, and she got married about 4 years into a wonderful man named Chris, who's like a brother to me. And
right,
then when they had their babies, their first baby Henry is my godson, which I was honored to have, and Rupert, his brother, I call him my nephew. I'm Uncle Bruce, and their dad Chris was working all Monday through Friday, and I travel usually on the weekends. So I spent probably more time with them than their dad did, in those first 2 3 years. And not putting that up against him, but I mean because I was with them every day, changing. I'd change a diaper and feed and take naps and teach. And Henry took his first steps. I have it on video with me holding his hand. So never being married, almost divorced twice, as I like to kid about, but not having children, it's an amazing, wonderful experience that I have that. And it's very special to me. So they're my family, and I call her my sister.
right, right. I think that's where I was confused. So now you're in Malibu, you're 15, life is amazing. You're surfing, you're got, girls running around everywhere. What happens after that?
I went to Santa Monica High School. I used to have to travel half hour, 40 minutes to school every morning. I was a water polo
Well,
player.
there was no high school in Malibu back then. That's only a
No, they
recent
had a
thing.
junior
They had to
high.
bus the kids to Samo.
Right. Well, the reason they didn't have a high school back then, I was told, was because they didn't want to bus the kids from town into Malibu. Right.
Mm.
Little shallow thinking there.
Well,
Now,
Malibu back then wasn't as full, if you like, as it is now. It wasn't that populated. It was more of a weekend place. There was a few sort of the hippies that live around Topanga. They were the more full timers, right? But
oh
there
yeah,
weren't
no,
that many homes back then.
there was a population like 35,000. I don't know what it is now, but it's a city into itself. And eventually, that junior high school did become Malibu High School right now. And but it's still a beautiful, spacious area. And we lived in three different homes there. I've been through every single brush fire since 1972. So I
Wow.
bow to firemen and firewomen every time I see them. And you might think, oh, well, he had a silver spoon in his mouth. He grew up in Malibu. Not quite that way.
Mm.
Okay.
Malibu
Um,
wasn't that ritzy either back then, right? It was a little bit more beachy, hippie. It wasn't super,
it was
super
laid
fancy.
back,
Yeah,
very laid back. If you were downtown in the Colony area where a lot of the celebrities lived, that's probably the one little niche area. But it's just a very open, and it's still open to a large extent, but very open, wonderful, spacious place. And safe and everything else, except as a surfer, they're very territorial. I mean, I got in tons of fights. All I did was do martial arts and fight the whole time. Not fight like going out every day, but sparring, surfing, martial. That was my whole outlet with my buddies. And as far as like being there and enjoying it, think of it. You can go to the beach every day. So it's just an amazing experience. It was amazing growth.
great lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you finished Samo High, and do you wanna go to college, or you got the work bug?
I wanted to go to college. I couldn't decide on a regular college because I wanted to take the electives for the first couple years, get them all out of the way so I could pick the school I want to. So I went to Santa Monica City College, which was considered and still is, I think, one of the top city colleges in the country.
Mhm.
And I went to work there, excuse me, I went to school there. And then I saw a 3x5 card on a job card board that said earn $250 to $450 a week selling over the telephone, right? Telemarketing. And I thought, wow, I got a gift for gab. I mean, that's a lot of money. This is 1975, right? So I went and got interviewed, and they hired me, and I had to be at work at 5 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. So I had to leave Malibu at 5 in the morning to get to work. And then I was selling office supplies, paper and toner for photocopiers. And I became the top salesman within 2 weeks. And I saw the sales manager with his feet on the desk earning, 1,000, 2,000 a week, which think what the kind of money that is today back then. And I thought I want his job, right? So I had his job within 3 months, and I started producing more than anybody. Now I see the owners coming in driving their Ferraris and their Porsches, and realizing I'm the one thinking in a certain way that, hey, they're getting that because I'm the one creating all the sales with the sales team. Why can't I do this, right? So I set out and started my own company and my first corporation, International Toner Corporation. And I had offices on Wilshire Boulevard in Santa Monica, and about 70-80% of the sales team that was working there left to come to work for me. Not that I pulled them out; they just wanted to work for me because I've always liked to be very motivating, and I love closing sales, and I love seeing people make money. So because I know I'll make money if they make money, and uh, they came to work, and all of a sudden I noticed that somebody was following me in a car every day, and I walked up to them, and they rolled up their window and they jammed away, and it was a private detective, and they were having
Mm.
me followed, and all of a sudden I got served a lawsuit for $1 million at 18 years old,
For a
and they
c
were
because you were competing, stealing
competing
business,
against
or
me. Yeah, but it was a frivolous lawsuit. It just I could have fought it and whatever, but at 18 I didn't have the kind of experience nor the wherewithal to mentally deal with that, and financially it was draining. So, long story cut short, I went back, met with them, and agreed to come back to work. So the salesman came back, I came back. They dropped the lawsuit. They paid all the legal bills, and they paid me more money and made me a partner in the company. So, things happen.
worked out.
Yeah. So then I continued in
Great
the
story.
telemarketing world, and then I went on to, and we did it legally. I was like the Wolf of LA, but it wasn't like the Wolf of Wall Street. It was cheating people. I actually went to an interview in Century City, which might have been his company um, back then, and they were doing what they were doing with the stocks and stuff, but I could tell something was wrong. I
Mm.
could tell it was a scam in some way. So I didn't accept their job offer, right? And there was literally 2 months later, I'm watching 60 Minutes, and the cameras go in the front door of the place that I got interviewed at,
Oh,
and they
wow.
busted the whole place, right? So it was one of those situations. So they're stealing people, elderly people's money and everything. It was a scam, as well as legit. It was a scam. But getting away from that, I did the telemarketing legally. I uh, also opened up a alarm and security company, putting alarm systems like West Tech in homes and businesses. Pretty much did every business along Main Street in Santa Monica, and was in that for a while. Not my kind of business. Profit margins too thin, too much work dealing with it, installers and all. It's just not my. It's not my field. And then I had an import export company. And when Herbalife came along, uh, I became a distributor back then for about a year to learn the business, along with one of the gentlemen that was my partner. And it's funny, I'll tell you how this went. And so we studied the business, then we opened up our own company called Herbal Care. We got doctors, Western and Eastern doctors together to formulate some of the finest products you can possibly imagine. And they were great. And then all of a sudden, a news story came out how Herbalife made false claims on their products. They had products that pregnant women should have been taking, and ingredients in there, and labeling laws that were not completely the way they should have been, whatever the case might have been. So it was like a witch hunt. If you had the word herbal in your company name, you were done. So we started off like wildfire. And then just like Herbalife was doing $90 million a month, they
Wow.
went down to like $10 million a month when this came out. Well, we weren't doing $90 million a month, but it just became the kiss of death if you had the name Herbal. And it's
Mm,
a shame because it was a really great business. My mom was one of my distributors. She made $50,000 in one year back then, because you can't make money at it. So you got to know what it's like to fail before you know what it's like to succeed. So I had all these trial and error things. And I was also going to military and collectible gun shows with my dad, who was a huge collector. And I was learning how to sell back and forth over the table collectibles for 5, 10,000, 100, 200, 20,000, whatever. And I started putting on these collectible gun shows myself in Vegas and in LA. And I was running about two or three businesses at a time. And actually, at the one point when I was 28, I had two very successful businesses. I was making excellent money, had a beautiful beach house in the Marina Del Rey Peninsula, living the life of Charlie Sheen and Two and a Half Men, minus the alcoholism, just really, it was good. But I was completely burned out. I
mm,
just I didn't enjoy going to work. And even though the money was good, but I was doing it for the money because I always wanted to take care of my family, make sure they had nothing to worry about. And so we're watching boxing, which we watched all the way from the point when I was born. And all of a sudden, out this man's becoming very popular in boxing, and this handsome, debonair James Bond style man walks out, and he's doing his "Let's get ready to rumble," and everybody's going crazy, watching, and he becomes a celebrity in the boxing world where announcers really weren't that way. There's only like one other announcer previous that anybody even noticed. And so what really struck me was I was a fan, but then when they kind of run his name on the screen, it said Michael Buffer. And I'm like,
mm.
hmm, what's going on here? Right. And
By the
he was,
way, sorry to interrupt, but did you not look at him and go, "Geez, I really look like this guy"? Because when I saw both of you, I'm like, clearly they're brothers.
well, I appreciate that because I considered him a pretty boy. I mean, if you want to call me handsome, I got scars, but it's okay. I'll take it. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it very much. He had that whole model look about him. Uh, Not at first. What got me was his name. That's what got, but people did think we looked alike, and I could see resemblance. And I was getting stopped in the street, my friends and such. Hey, is your brother that guy that goes, "Let's get ready to rumble"? I go, no, my brother's Brian, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, what's going on here? And when they put his name on the screen, I'm like, this is weird. I've seen every phone book in the United States, but I've never seen my last name. We didn't have the internet back then, and
Mhm.
it's a natural thing when you picked up a phone book to look in the white pages and see if there was your name in there, right? So I never saw my name in the white pages. And I started writing the offices of Don King and Bob Arum, the big boxing promoters. I couldn't Google him. I couldn't find anything out. And I got information that he uh, lived nearby or grew up in New Jersey and other kind of similar type things happening. And it got to the point that I'm driving up north with my dad one day. And I said, Dad, do you know who this guy is? I mean, any idea? Because I'm getting stopped. He's got the last name, the whole bit. And I get this. I think that's your brother.
Well, just as
What?
nonchalantly as that.
Nonchalant, that's my dad. Just nonchalant. Dad, are you kidding me? He
And
goes, son,
you
I didn't.
said
I was like, no, I was like, my jaw hit the seat. I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? So I asked why, and he said, well, son, I never told you, but I was married briefly during World War II. I was 20 years old, went overseas to do my part. Um, my dad was a Marine for 13 years, served in World War II in Korea, was a drill instructor and hand-to-hand combat instructor and brig warden at Camp Pendleton. I mean, I grew up with a very tough father.
Mm.
And he said I came back after 9 months and a divorce ensued, but a child was born. And the last time I saw him was when he was two and a half, and his name is Michael. And I think that's him.
And he
And
never thought did your by the way, did your mother know about it, or your other siblings?
it was a secret that was kept from my brother Brian and I, for whatever
So but
reason.
your mum knew he
She
had
knew.
another child out there somewhere, but she had
Yeah.
not met obviously not met Michael, and
No, not at
no one
all.
knew where they were.
Exactly. And my
Wow.
dad had no living relatives. My dad's father, Johnny Buff, is the bantamweight flyweight boxing champion from 1921. He was called one of the greatest fighters in 1921. He died the year I was born.
And
So
did Michael know that your grandfather was a boxing champ, and did you know?
uh, Michael didn't know anything really until he met us, and I knew only because my dad told me.
So
And
isn't
so,
that
it's amazing.
coincidental?
It's
Wow.
amazing how it's in the blood, right?
Right?
Yep,
Completely.
exactly.
So
So
and you were doing martial arts as a kid as well, so, I mean, just it all ties together. So your
it all
dad
ties
says, by the way, that's your brother. I didn't tell you, but yes. And what is your initial thought and feeling? And how old are you, by the way, at this point? Are you
I'm
28, 29?
like 28, maybe 29.
And you're
And
thinking what? You're thinking and
I'm
feeling what in this moment?
I didn't know what to think and feel. It was just one of those feelings that you're kind of like analyzing, "How do I feel right now?" Right?
Did you feel like your
So,
dad had lied to you your whole life? Did you feel like there was a deception,
no,
a betrayal, or was it more,
there's a lot of
okay,
secrets my dad kept
yeah,
from his early years, even to the point even with Johnny Buff, his dad, it's like, when I look it up in the history books and everything, even though he signed his birth certificate, I never see my dad with him, so I'm wondering what was that relationship, right?
hmm,
Although it is his father, and it's my dad before he passed away in 2008, about literally about 2 weeks or so before he passed, he said, "Son, I've got to tell you and your brother some things I've never told you," and I never got to hear him. Right?
oh, he
So,
never told you?
um, so I don't know. He
Oh.
was a real, like I said, old breed, very special individual, and I can't say anything more than that. So
So
when
you
that
so you find
happened,
out you have this brother, and are you immediately thinking, "I wanna meet him," or "Let's get the family back together," or not
yeah, I
really?
didn't really know how to approach it. It's just I was talking to my dad, why don't you contact him? My brother Brian was pushing him to contact him, and one night he was doing a show, a boxing show at the Reseda Country Club in the Valley, which is the place. If you saw the movie Boogie Nights, when they had that 12, 13 minute single camera shot in the beginning of the film, that was the Reseda Country Club. And so he was doing it. It's a small venue, so my brother pushed him, and I pushed him to call him. So he called, left a message for Michael Buffer, and lo and behold, Michael called back, and they met for lunch, and it was his son. And then we all met later on at a place I'll never forget, at La Terraza, Barrington, Wilshire, on the second floor of the building there. And in walks Michael, and I'm a big fan. At the same time, I'm coming to grips with the fact that this is my blood. Not only in my family, this is my blood. So we all got along really, really well.
When you
And
first see him, does he look like your dad? Does he look like you or Brian? Is anyone making the physical connection? Did it feel
um,
right? Did it feel
there
real,
are
I guess?
definitely similarities between him and him and my father. There's definitely similarities. There's no
Like the
question.
mannerisms or the way they speak
Uh,
maybe?
Michael's very unique. We're very different, yet we're very similar, right? Michael has his own style, his own specific style. But there are certain things that are similar, but mannerisms and vocal mannerisms, after when you're 43 like he was when he met me, he's all set. He has all those
Mm,
mannerisms, and they didn't come from my dad. So
right. Did
we
his
got
mother
along.
remarry? Did he have another father in his life?
He grew up. First off, what happened is that his mom, uh, not didn't put him up for adoption, but he was raised by another family. His mother passed away, if I'm not incorrect, when he was 6 years old,
Oh, wow.
and he was raised by a family named Huber, right? And he had a real, as he puts it, leave it to Beaver upbringing. Great parents, the whole bit. Really loved his, if you call them step parents or whatever the proper term is.
Adoptive parents, oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then when he went in the army at 20, they said on his birth certificate, they go, "You're not Michael Huber, you're Michael Buffer," right? That's what your birth certificate says, because he was never formally adopted.
Mm.
And when they did that, then they became Michael Buffer. And then he was a part time used car salesman, model. I mean, the man could pick anything off the rack and fits into the T, right? I've got to have adjustments here and there because whatever. And that's why I have great tailors to make all my tuxedos. And where was I on that? So he kept the names. Think about this, Danny. Those fork in the roads in life that happen. right? Had that not happened, had we not gotten together, and then 4 years later, I realized when I went to an event in 1992, Riddick Bowe, Vander Holyfield fought for the first time, and I saw everybody reacted to the Rumble. I went home, not home, I went to my room in Vegas that night, and instead of going out and doing blackjack and partying and looking, to play with everybody, I went back to my room and incessantly I couldn't stop. Started writing down all these notes, trademark this phrase, put them in football fields, teams, corporations, video games, toys, TV shows, movies. Make it the most popular phrase on the tip of everybody's tongue. And I researched it more, and I read that Pat Riley, when the Lakers three-peated, Chicago three-peated, he trademarked three-peat, right? And they said, oh, we made $1.5 million off that. Well, nobody really knew what trademarking a phrase was back then. So I did my homework, and I had told Michael to trademark it before that, which he did, but he didn't trademark it to keep it completely protected. So I said, I called him up like soon after that, and I said basically on the lines of, listen, I saw how everybody reacted when you said let's get ready to rumble that night, and I see it all the time. There's so much more here. You haven't made a hat, you haven't made a T-shirt. I need to become your manager, direct your career, and I want to become your partner. So I get the proper manager commission, but as a partner, equal partner, I'll go out there and create video games, toys, movies, this long laundry list that I had, and I'll sell my two companies even with the money I'm making because I'm burned out. I'm not happy about going to work. I'll roll the dice with the money I have in the bank, and I'll make this happen. And he goes, well, how are you going to do all this? I said, I really don't know. I said, but believe me, I'll make it happen. If I'm going to give all this up, I'll make it happen. And that was the beginning right there. And I said, I want to announce. And he said, well, and he's right. It would be a confliction of interest as a boxing announcer. There's really no money in it. He was the only one making any real money at it, working almost every week, you know, not making the millions people think he was making because you're on TV. They see you on TV, they think you make millions, just making a good living. Well, together we teamed up, and I don't want to take full credit. I want to take partial credit. He's the talent. I'm the man behind him. And eventually, I had my first product, which was a talking keychain and a talking mug. So when you drank watching a game, you press the button. It's like "Let's get ready to rumble" comes out of it. And I would pack up promo kits that would cost me $15 a piece of Kinkos that I would make, and I travel to New York and I go to the toy conventions. I go to these different things. I'd be talking to people around the boxing ring, taking names and notes and following up and pitching and pitching and pitching. And I had my first two products out within a year, and then more started to happen with the licensing for sports teams. An item came out called the Jock Jam CD in like '96, and he was the first cut on the album. And luckily, I did something which probably saved the entire business. Instead of making that cut he did before the Two Unlimited song that goes dun 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 dun, that's there.
Mhm.
Everybody in music, they're part of BMI and ASCAP, right? Which allows DJs and everybody to just play incessantly, and you collect whatever you collect. Well, phrases like "show me the money, where's the beef," they come and they go. They have the Randy Warhol 15 minutes, and I wanted to be really careful, so I copywrote it. I had a copywritten instead and a trademark instead of being part of BMI and ASCAP, so nobody could use it without licensing it from us. But what happened is almost every major sports team around the country, I was getting reports, was playing it because of the jock jams. So now I didn't have a real attorney at the time, as we had to later on to protect the trademark. But I would call them up and I would act like an attorney. I mean, I just learned how to do this on my own. I said, look, you can't do this. We own this. Blah blah blah. You need to license it. I'm not looking to get a lot of money out of you. Here's the license fee. You can have a season license for a year, renew it. Blah blah blah. And it started taking off. You know. But then we would get legal violations that people take it. Even the biggest movie companies in the world, Disney with their movie Hercules and Rumble in the Bronx with Jackie Chan. I woke up one morning and the LA Times said, "Get ready to rumble with Jackie Chan," like 5 times on each page for like 4 pages. I know he threw up my Cheerios. I go, well, who's this? Nobody talked to us about this. And that was my first and only real lawsuit that I ever filed against it. I filed two out of all the settlements that we've dealt with because it's such a firm, protected trademark that, hey, if you violate it, all I want to do is get the license fee I would have charged you. Or I don't
Mhm.
want you to use it at all because it's not good how you're using it to benefit our business. It doesn't fit our brand. And that became a whole nother endeavor of business that, we learned. And then we had an attorney firm that came on and worked with us very well. And it's just very well protected. But it did eventually become probably the most famous trademark in the world spoken by anybody. And I'm proud to say that my
Amazing.
time trademark is getting really popular too, that I started in the UFC. But so anyway, that was that back then. And then the UFC came on the scene in 1993, and it was the fastest moving pay per view ever. And I was enthralled with it. It was a spectacle back then. It wasn't the real, um, let's say, modern day sport. It needed rules, right?
Mm.
It was either fascinating to people or it scared the hell out of them.
It
Even
was the Wild
ESPN back
West.
then,
It was the Wild West of
it was the
UFC back
wild,
then, wasn't
wild
it?
west,
Yeah, that it wasn't as
right?
shiny and, as
No, no,
polished
no,
as it is now.
not,
Yeah.
not quite. Thanks to Dana White and the Fertitta brothers when they bought it in 1999, that all changed, and that goes on to another story. But I got Michael to do the first, second, excuse me, UFC 6, 7, and Ultimate. And pardon me if I'm scattering around with my explanations here. Um, and then I got a call from WCW Wrestling, which he was very popular in. He was doing a lot of their shows, and they're huge, right? And he was making great money with that. I got him an incredible contract with that. And they called me on a Monday after the first UFC, and they said, "Why is he doing that?" Because he came out and they had him say, "If it's not in the octagon, it's not real," right?
Mm.
Well, that wrestling back then wanted you to think that everything they did was real. They wanted you to know that when Hulk Hogan hit you 20 times in the face, that it was real. Well, no, your face would be hamburger. You'd be knocked out beyond whatever. So
Right.
before that lawsuit or whatever, the court case happened in Connecticut, that they became sports entertainment, right? Because they couldn't bill themselves that it was real. But a lot of people do think, and I have a lot of respect for wrestling because those guys and ladies, they work their buns off and they get hurt a lot. It's incredible what they do. But we fight for real in the UFC. So I said, okay, I have 3 shows in his contract. The contract I have with you, WCW, allows him to do this. I'm going to have him do the 3 shows, and then he won't do any more, which he wouldn't be able to grow with them at the rate they did because he was
Mm.
so busy doing everything else.
Right.
And then I pitched myself to be in the octagon, and it fell on deaf ears. And I said, "You need a buffer in the octagon. I will help you build this brand. I have the connections you don't have, and I will work it. I won't just be an announcer. I want to grow with you, the announcer, but I'll help you build it because I truly believe it's going to be the biggest thing in sports." And so they had me. I got a fighter in the game. A guy sent me a tape from Minnesota who was like a 6'1", 340-pound Neanderthal, hands down to his ankles, street fighting guy, the perfect guy for the UFC back then. So I flew down to Beaumont, Puerto Rico, February 16th, 1996, with him, and I convinced the owner at the party the night before he always gave to let me announce the prelims. Let me get in there. Let me show you what I got. You need me in the octagon, which he let me do. Then I thought, okay, I look back on it, I'm like this, no, 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 because I didn't like the way I sounded. But I did my best. And then I kept calling him for the job. You have to ask for the job. I would fly to New York, take him out for drinks, hey, let's do this, let's do this. So again, deaf ears until they called me and they said, "We need you in Dothan, Alabama in 2 days to announce the whole show." The announcer, uncle passed away, has to go to a funeral. And I was in the hospital with my mother. And she just had a serious operation the day before and she was recuperating. And it was like a scene out of Rocky. I'm beside her, sitting beside her bed. She's, recovering. And, after having God knows how much cut. And I get the call and I go, yeah, yeah. I said, "Listen, I got to call you back." Right. I hang up the phone and she looks at me. She goes, "That's the call you've been waiting for, right?" My mom's one of my biggest motivators and amazing woman, best friend, mom. And so I looked at her, I said, "Yes, mom, but I can't leave you like this." She goes, "No." She puts her hand in the air like this, like Talia Shire when she's in a coma and Rocky can't train. And finally
Yeah.
she looks at him, she goes, "Go win," and the song goes off and the training goes off. So I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yes, you have to go." So I'm like, boom. And all of a sudden in my head, I hear dun, dun, da, da, dun, da, da, dun, da, da, da.
Mm.
It's like the whole
Well,
thing
you've
is
been
happening.
pushing and asking and asking and pushing,
Asking
and
and asking, and
finally
it comes
this
to
is the
fruition.
moment.
So then I go down there and I do the whole show and I think I do a good job.
Do you know
And
what Can I just intercept there? Do you know what you're doing when you get down there a lot of the time? Because do you have a script? Do you not have a script? Is it a whole improv, ad lib scenario?
there's a
Tell me
combination.
from a announcer host perspective, what do you get and what do you have to bring?
You get the essentials of what you need to announce. You get their stats and everything else. Uh, and then you do have to do it in a certain form, and it's on like a 3x5 card that they give you, and then I threw some of my own personality into it, just trying to find my space, and I did it, and I was so used to Michael doing his work that it really wasn't hard for me, right?
Right.
I
And
never got nervous.
when did the "it's time" how did you think of it? Was that just happen on the first go, or did that come later on?
Well, I'll finish this and I'll
And
tell you about
yeah, because I wanna know if
it.
that was a conscious decision to have your own,
No, in answer
catchphrase.
to that question, I was never phrase driven. Everybody wanted to have a phrase like Michael Buffer. I wasn't phrase driven. So it's not, I always thought it's not what I say, it's how I say it. Right. And I wanted to
Mhm.
learn how to inflect and intonate and do everything properly and get my basic thing down. And so when I got back from that trip, I, thought, okay, they're going to hire me, but they hired somebody else. They hired another guy, friend of the producer. So now I'm thinking, this took me a year and a half to get this job. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, what do I have to do to get this job? Right. So aside from asking or stopping off in New York or the occasional phone call, about 6 months later, I got a call from the owner saying, would you like to co-star in Friends as yourself? The TV show was in its second season. And it was the hottest comedy on TV, not just in the States, but around the world. And I said, well, yeah, of course. So Warner Brothers sent a runner down. They took audio and tape, and they called me at 5 o'clock. And they said, be on the set at 6 in the morning and rehearse all day, film on Wednesday with the whole cast. And it was called The Ultimate Fighting Champion. It was with John Favreau, and he was Monica's boyfriend. And, it was a very, very funny segment.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember
It's
that show.
episode 23, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. But I told the owner, I said, I need to talk to you on the set. And I met him on the set at lunch. And I said, look, I just wait. I feel like a girl waiting to be asked to the prom. I've been asking you forever. I'm down here co-starring as myself on the biggest comedy on TV as your announcer, and you're going to get more press from this than anything. And here I am, your announcer. I go, let's stop effing around. Let's make a deal. And it was the best poker hand I ever played. And that's when I
Brilliant.
became the announcer, and I did every show, uh, whether it was 30 or 40 a year. I did every show. Moving on, we only did 3 a year back then, which became 6, and then Dana took it over with the Fertitta brothers, and then we went into 10 and 12 and 20 and 30 and 40, and now it's the biggest thing in fighting sports. So it was just again that fork in the road. You got to ask for the job. You got to go for it, but you got to perform.
I
You got to make it work.
We do some mentoring and consulting with young professionals, young students that want to get into the business in one capacity or another, whether it's in front or behind the camera or on and off the stage. And the one thing I always like to ask my guests is, what advice would you give to your younger self looking at you now? Like, what if you could go back in time? You were clearly extremely persistent. You knew what you wanted. You went for it. Those weren't obviously issues for you. But if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Advice that I actually kind of gave myself back then, but when people ask me, what I want to go into business, I want to do something, what do I do? I tell them, look at the top three companies or the top three individuals that are doing what you do. Analyze everything. How do they get there? What do they do? What keeps them successful as best as you can understand it? And most of all, decide what you're passionate about. And because if you're passionate about something and you can learn to monetize it, then you're not just going to work, you're living a lifestyle, which is what I've done ever since I got into sports and entertainment. I've been living a lifestyle where before I was burned out and I had to go to work and I wasn't happy. And I hope everybody can achieve that, have some passion for what they do. I said, but don't copy, I mean, people are copying Michael Buffer all the time. Now they have a tendency to copy my style, and that's fine. It's the height of flattery. But you want to have your own individual style. And that's what you want to work on. So juxtapose all the knowledge you have of all this, apply it to your journey, and go in and make it happen. But make sure you're really into what you're doing and give yourself a time limit. If it's not coming together, you have to learn when to pack up your chips and find another game.
What would you say you do unknowingly or knowingly as part of your prep before you do a show? Everybody has their little rituals and their little prep.
Yeah,
What does Bruce Buffer do?
I get a lot of sleep. I used to go out and have a great time on Friday nights until 2 in the morning or whatever, but you can still go out on Friday nights and be back by 11. But I like a good night's sleep. I want to be rested. I've got a job to do. I have a power breakfast. I train, stretch, meditate, and just get ready. Put my game attitude on, And then I never rehearse. I just make sure I have the names down correctly, but I never rehearse. When I'm writing out the fight cards, it's like a 2 to 4 hour process. I'm learning everything that's on the fight cards, and basically, I get in there. I feel the energy of the crowd. I get in the octagon. I let it go. I let it go, which is the way it should be, and it works. And the more energy I get from the crowd, the better off. And I have honey on the table and some Hall's mentholyptus drops, to make sure my throat is lubricated and stay
I was
well.
gonna
Because
ask you about that. It's a very energetic job in the sense that you have to feel to the back guy on the back row in that entire arena,
yeah,
right? So you are projecting from the diaphragm, and it's exhausting. Are you on a high, on an adrenaline high at the end of each show, or are you spent? Are you exhausted?
good question. You know what you're talking about, Danny. I I'm on an adrenaline high.
Yeah.
I definitely am. I'm probably the only announcer to lose 2 or 3 pounds of water weight because the way I work, I don't stand still. It's not show business. Like I said last night, it's not show business. It's show biz, right?
Mhm.
So you want to provide an entertainment factor for what you're doing. And I grow my passion on the octagon floor. I get out there and I give it 100%. These men and women are about to put their blood, sweat, and tears on the line, lives on the line for our
Mhm.
entertainment. Like Gladiator, are you entertained? I mean, this is it. These are the most highly skilled fighters in the world. They deserve everything. When it gets back to the "it's time" trademark that I have, I didn't use that for probably 6 or 7 years. I
Wow.
used to say at the start of the show, "It's time to begin the Ultimate Fighting Championship." And then when Dana bought it, I was brought into Vegas for what I call the Godfather meeting. And it was only myself and one other individual. They kept on. Everybody else went. They only kept us. Big John McCarthy, referee, and myself. And he said he didn't want me to say that anymore. He wanted me to dig down deep and announce what he considered the two greatest announcements. Was one by my brother, which was the Riddick Bowe Holyfield fight, the night that I had the epiphany to sell my businesses, strangely enough. And the other was a Tito Ortiz fight against Evan Tanner in Atlantic City that I did. He said, "That's the energy that I like." And I remember that because that's the energy I want to give, right?
Mm.
I go, "Dana, no problem," because that's what I needed to hear. And then I just kept building up and building up. And every day when I wake up for years, I would always look in the mirror, you know, it's time to have the best day I can have, to be the best I can be, to go out there and perform. So I thought at one key point, right before announcing the main event, it's like the fighter's been training for 8 to 10 weeks. The fans have been in this audience and watching or in home watching for 5 hours. The main event's about to happen. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time. So I started saying it, and it evolved as the tool evolves into the way I say it now. I mean, I would jump and get 3 feet of air, the whole bit. I still, put on that kind of a show to a degree, but it just grew and grew and grew. And the moment I knew it was taking off was in about 2003, or rather, right like in the 2000s. I was in Brazil and was doing a show for the first time. We went back to Rio de Janeiro, and it was Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, one or the other. And there was like 18,000 or so people in the audience, Portuguese speaking people. And when I did It's Time, they all said it with me. And when I got out of the octagon, the cut man stitched around. He goes, "Buff, did you hear that?" And I don't hear because I'm so focused on the fighters. I block the audience out
Mhm.
because I'm all about them at that moment. And I said, "No." He goes, "But Bruce, the whole audience said it's time with you." And that's when I knew it was starting to click, right?
Wow.
So I formally trademarked it, and I didn't bother creating products like the products I have today or anything. I let it just grow naturally. And when you let something in business grow organically and naturally, it has a much stronger base to work from, which is what I found. And then it's just business. I built Michael and Let's Get Ready to Rumble and apply the same principles to my career in its time. And it's far more than just announcing. It's evolved into spokesperson, movie appearances, TV, all that, and the products that I'm really pushing out this year because I could have pushed these products out 3, 4 years ago, but it wasn't time. Now it's time, right?
Excuse the pun. Now it is time. Just elaborating on what you just said, what is your favorite non-UFC gig to do? Is it the movie appearances? Is it the public speak? What is your outside of the day job favorite thing to do work-wise?
I love the videos that I do at my website for the weddings and the baby births, and it just brings people. It makes people so happy. These
Mhm.
thank you notes we get. I mean, it almost sometimes brought tears like Kristen's in my eyes because they're just on their wedding day. That I'm part of their wedding day. That's one big thing I love. I love motivating people. I love when I can be, coaching and motivational. I used to do a lot of motivational speeches and appearances before COVID, and I enjoy that too. Uh, the appearances I do are varied, whether it's for a corporation, whether it's the Raider game in Las Vegas. He's come out and open all the Raider games and for 80,000 people in attendance. I love doing that. It's awesome. It's incredible. You're on the videotrons around. You've got the energy and you're feeling from everything. I guess, Danny, the best way to answer that is I love all that I do. That every situation has its own flavor. Some may be more fun than others, of course. Some more tedious than others, but I'm very lucky to say I just love what I do. I maybe overwork
You're lucky,
myself,
you know,
but I
you're
love
very
it.
lucky in that respect. Now, I
Yeah,
wouldn't do well by the UFC fans listening if I didn't ask you a couple of quick fire round UFC questions. Okay, you ready? Just short, sweet answers. Um, Favorite, most standout, memorable UFC fight?
impossible to answer because I've done every fight for 27 years. And the moment I think I've seen the best fight that ever happened, I see another one 2 months later. I can only give you examples of the great fights, one of which would be with a man who passed away recently, Stephan Bonner, Forrest Griffin, which was the finale of the first Ultimate Fighter series when we were on Spike. And we were having a 5 share rating, which you understand what that is. And it went up to like a 12 or 15 during the main event, which was such an incredible fight that everybody tuned in, and that really just took us off. That set off the UFC right there because they were 44 million in the hole producing, rather running the company and everything, and the Ultimate Fighter helped pull it out and created a lot of the success you know that obviously went way up from there with Dana at the helm and the Fertitta brothers.
Top three UFC fighters, favorite fighters.
Again, difficult, but I'll give you top three: George St. Pierre, Chuck Liddell, um, John Jones, probably the greatest of all time.
Favorite octagon, favorite location to work.
Again, that's shared by a couple. The passion the Brazilians have for their fights is amazing, but I would say as far as an arena, everything, the O2 Arena in London, the O2 Arena in Montreal, right? And what's another? Australia. They go crazy in Australia. It's awesome down there.
Who are the ones to
With
watch? Give
respect to
me
everybody else. Respect everybody else.
your three up and coming ones to watch that everybody should look out for that you think are going to be the next big names.
Sean O'Malley is one of them. Um, you would hit me with that one. There's so many. See, this is where the difficult part comes in. Sean O'Malley, John Jones return, definitely. Paddy Pimlet, an Irish fighter. Paddy the Baddy, he's quite the showman. Uh, there's just so many. There's just so many. I'm sorry if I can't answer it all.
No,
I'd be
listen, I
back.
put you on the spot. Thank you for answering
Yeah.
those. What do you have any hidden talents or skill sets that we don't know about already? You seem to have so many, but you did mention you did martial arts when you were younger. So can you get in that octagon and hash out a few minutes with some of those guys?
If I had to turn to, I mean, I still train and all, and I fought a lot in my life. I have three black belts, and I was a kickboxer for many years, and I've always stayed in shape. And if something goes down and I have to turn to, I will. There's
So,
actually a
so you knew about, the I guess the foundation of UFC, at least with a few besides maybe jiu-jitsu, but you already are a martial artist yourself. So you had the fundamentals down already before you worked with them, which I
yeah.
guess, which is probably led to a part of the success of what you do. Because I said this to you the other day, the UFC fans are the most hardcore fans. Like you got to know your stuff, right?
Rabid fans, rabid. Um, yeah, no, I understand all the moves. That's why I got into the sport so much. I understand the whole aspect of that type of fighting.
Hmm.
It was raw back then, everything else, but definitely I totally absorbed it. I got it. It's who I am. It's what I'm from. There's a story years ago where I got hit in an elevator with Dana White was in by a top welterweight fighter in the UFC, and he and I went at it for 10 floors in the elevator. They even made a TV show out of it on the UFC Fight Pass, an animated show, and kind of gained a lot of respect from people because I stood up for myself. But I've always stood up for myself.
I love that. That's great.
It's not about being the toughest man in the world because there's always a faster guy. But you know what? You're a man. Nobody puts their hands on you. Nobody disrespects you or hurts your loved ones. And I come from that old breed school.
Any memorable moments outside of the octagon that we don't know about that would be fun to talk about and fill us in on? Was there any behind the scenes
Oh,
drama, fights? Was it crazy backstage, or
we got
is it full
another
of
hour.
weirdos and lunatics? Give me a couple of good stories we may not
I'll
have
give you
heard.
one. There's a documentary on, I think it's on Showtime right now, called Catching Lightning, which is a story about this guy named Lee Murray who planned and headed out the largest cash robbery in a of an armed center, like a bank center, whatever the term is, in England. They stole $92 million, right? Largest robbery in the history of the world, right? Well, he was a fighter, and he before he fought in the octagon. We were at London, and we were at Royal Albert Hall doing a show, and then we went to a nightclub, and it's all in this documentary called China White, and it was maybe 100 plus fighters and people, and they opened up the whole club to us. And then when we walked out, there was a misunderstanding between two people, and one of Tito Ortiz's friends got knocked out, fell on the ground. Taxi cab ran over his arm. All hell broke loose. Tito goes this way. Chuck Liddell goes that way. I would follow Chuck Liddell. Not that Tito's not tough, but you follow Chuck Liddell in a street fight, and he's just knocking people out left and right. I mean, there were bodies just lying down. I'm watching his back, making sure nobody goes after his back, and I'm just watching him just knocking these people out, and just doing whatever I could do, and it's just it's chaos everywhere on cobblestones.
He's the
And then
last
Tito went.
person you wanna get in a street fight with. I
He's
mean,
the
to
last person you want to get a street fight
oh
with.
my gosh, you couldn't make
And
this up.
this guy Lee Murray over there faced down Tito Ortiz and threw about 5 punches, knocked him out, football kicked him in the head, and Tito and his crew and I we drove back to the hotel, and um, Tito was very upset, and he wanted to wait till this other group of people got back that he thought was involved, and all hell was going to break loose if it happened, and trying to calm him down. And then guys showed up, as they talked about in the documentary, in long coats outside, not very safe looking individuals. And God knows what they had under the long coats. And a guy came in named Tony Fricklin, who's in the documentary, and told me what was going on. And he said, "You got to get Tito up to his room." And luckily, you got him back up to his room, and nothing happened because it was going to get very violent. So that's one.
I was gonna
There's
ask you, just off the back of that, when you are a cage fighter, street fighter, professional fighter, are they more inclined for guy I mean, this is such a guy thing, but on a you see at certain cities at a certain time of night after everyone's had a couple of drinks in them, do people try and fight them all the time? And you must see this. Are they just sort of waiting? I can take them out. A couple of guys have a few drinks, get a little macho, and feel like they can take these guys out and try it. I'm assuming it must happen a lot more than we hear about.
uh, not, it's happened in the past, but not now. People are smarter about that. I mean, there's a story that happened last week where Nate Diaz is in New Orleans. He's going to box Jake Paul. He's a very famous UFC fighter, and he wound up getting in an altercation where a guy came at him and choked him out on the street. I think it's more so that we hear about UFC fighters that have actually been like Supermen and have stopped crimes, you know, stopped robberies, stopped other
Wow.
stuff. Have incidents happen? I'm sure, but as a fighter, you're calm. You have lethal weapons here, right? Even if I got in a fight, all of us could get sued. Nobody wants to get sued.
I
So
heard actually that the better the fighter, the more calm they are because they know they've got nothing to prove. They know exactly what they're capable of.
they know exactly what they're capable of, and
Mm.
they're not supposed to do that. It could interfere with their career. You know, Nate Diaz has a second degree assault arrest warrant out from right now, which could interfere with his big boxing event coming up potentially. You never know. Where he's going to make millions and millions of dollars. I mean, you don't listen. If you're going to fight, it's like Rocky said in the movie: don't fight for free, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're protecting yourself or your loved ones. That's just life in general. This is
Do
a
you
very.
see the Do you see the change of the fighters from when they first get discovered and get their first appearance on UFC to when they become these big, famous names and fighters? Do you see the change in them and the egos and or most of them stay pretty humble and the UFC is a place where you can't really get too big up on yourself because there's someone better following you?
There's a couple people that are big. I mean, Conor McGregor could have been the greatest role model in sports, right? And from going from 50 euros on public welfare in Ireland, 150 euros a month to make, being worth two, three, $400 million now with all his success. And God bless him. It's a great story. He has the it factor. And I was really proud of him and all his role model image and everything he's keeping. But then he did stuff that took away from that, right? So, or he would park his Lamborghini in the middle of the street and go in and do a bar. That's not what you do. Okay. Always be respectful. As I say in my podcast, it's like be a role model to your sphere of influence. Show everybody respect around you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And I like Connor a lot, but he knows that I'll say what I want to say when he says something wrong. But he's grown into a very big success story. So aside from the little Connor tidbit there, I have met maybe five a-holes in 27 years. They're so calm. These men and female both. They're so amazing. They're martial artists. There's a Zen aspect to it. Um, an amazing group. I mean, in all athletes walk to their own tune. Hockey athletes are usually, as a rule, very humble, very approachable. And one of the reasons the UFC has gotten so big is because these fighters, men and women both, are very humble, right? And they're very approachable, and they do everything to appease the public, as Dana White will do, or I'll do, signing every autograph I'm ever asked for. I mean, fans deserve that kind of treatment, right? Worst thing you can do is turn down an autograph for a child, right? That's the worst thing you can ever do. Make an
What do
impression on
you
them.
What do you do when you're not working? Because we've heard all about your amazing businesses and all the different, businesses you've created and still work on to this day and are still about to launch. What do you like to do when you're not at work, when you're not in business mode?
I'm a film buff. I enjoy good film. I'm a foodie. I enjoy good restaurants. I enjoy music. I enjoy being with my friends and my family. When I'm out at a UFC show, it's like being Elvis Presley for the weekend. I like to come home and just get back down to earth, just calm down, you know. But when I say that because everybody wants attention. The fans are rabid, and they deserve it. I do my show and leave that and get back down to reality. What life is all about. I'm sure you understand that.
Yep. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
I'll go back to my father. Always be honest. You know, always be honest. Treat people with respect. It goes a long way. Goes a long way. And you know, if you see something, you believe in it, set your goal, see yourself doing it, make it happen. That's the name of the game. I
What
could go
can
on for a
we
long
You could go
things.
on and on. I mean, you're brilliant at this. You're the perfect guest because
Just call me
I don't
Bruce
even have to
Buffer.
ask you. What can we expect to see next from Bruce Buffer? Like, what can we look forward to seeing? I know you have a fragrance line coming out and amongst many other things. Tell us about what we can
Okay.
see
Well,
next.
I have what's considered one of the finest bourbons in the market. It's the top five best sipping bourbon in America. It's called Puncher's Chance,
Nice.
and I'm very proud of this. We've won six gold medals, and
Beautiful
we just
bottle, by the way.
thank you. Three of them were actually designed of the bottle, and then we just came out with a single barrel version called the Undisputed, which won a platinum award right out of the gate, and it's selling like hotcakes. Very excited about building that business. Very excited. And then I've always enjoyed a fine scent. I used to love Calvin Klein Obsession, and I've always wanted to take care of myself, and as a man should. I mean, you take care of yourself for us, we should take care of ourselves for you, right? So I've always been into grooming, and I created my own with an amazing company out of London, the It's Time cologne.
That's
Right there, I'll show
great.
you the bottle.
Bruce, you have to have your own just network of infomercials because you could fill a whole day's worth of
Yeah,
advertising. This
well,
is great.
my days are busy enough as it is, so it's all okay.
I love it.
The It's Time cologne, actually, this is the cool thing, Danny. It's the top selling, fastest selling cologne on Amazon.
Amazing.
And in
Also
England, it's the
beautiful
number
packaging.
five fastest selling cologne on Amazon right
That's
now.
great. And are you I know the answer to this already. I was gonna say, are you integral to the development and the smart I know
Yes,
you probably got your finger in every pie with every step of the way, right? You like to be part of it.
all all the way through, from development, you name it. As a matter of fact, we're coming out with a special scent next year, which I'll start testing new scents here in a couple months. For
That's
the
gonna be
process.
fun. I bet that's a
Yeah,
fun process. Yeah.
and then the other scents that we have The toiletry line, if I can bore you a little more, like for instance, deodorant.
Yeah.
It's
You've got it
time.
all
There's going to be
covered.
a facial wash, body wash. It's time aftershave. You know,
He's like a
it's all
he's like a marketing machine, this one. It's brilliant. In fact, you should open the Bruce Buffer School of Marketing and Branding because you really are an expert in marketing. I would say, besides
thank you,
being an expert, usually you're more one is more a salesperson or one is more a marketer, but you definitely are a hybrid of both. You know how to market, you know how to sell. You've just got it down. It's really quite
thank you.
something.
I appreciate that very much. I'm going to show you one more. This is my baby. This is
All
going to be
right,
hot.
let us see what you got.
Aside from all the toiletries coming out, just follow me on Instagram at Bruce Buffer UFC. I make all the announcements there. Twitter, Facebook, whatever. But I'm coming out with one of the healthiest energy drinks ever. It's Time Energy. So all these products will be distributed in about 30 plus countries around the world. We're already distributing in a number of countries, with the UK being our test market, and this will be here in the America in about 6 weeks. You can drink 4 cans of this a day with no crash. It's full of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and 200 grams of caffeine from green coffee beans. So you're going to get
Wow.
your boost, but you're not going
Wow.
to get your crash, right?
Yeah, and
It
how's the sugar in that? Because all those
The sugar,
energy drinks are
it's natural. It's like we don't put sugar in it.
that's amazing. All right.
Like, the Monster has sugarless
I
or
need
has
one of those for my son because I hate that he drinks that other one we all know of, but he does
yeah,
crash on
it's
that
not.
other one. Yeah.
I don't want to put down any of the company because success breeds competition and competition breeds success. So I never put anybody down. I just stand above as best I can. But I like healthy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So this will be followed by a whole line of nutritional products that we're going to be building. Because when you create a product, you basically create it. You create a pipeline, and then the objective is to load the pipeline.
So just before we wrap this up, I just have to know this, and all those entrepreneurial listeners we have, I'm sure would love to know this too. When you think of something you want to do next, an endeavor or a project or a product, do you think of the product first and have that visual already there in your mind, and then reverse engineer it, find the manufacturer, find the operational people? I mean, what's your process when you want to do a new product
My
or
process
service?
is either I've approached a company or they've approached me, and they have everything in house. So I don't need to build offices. I don't need to pay for storage. I don't need to stock stuff. That's why I never had a clothing company. I don't want to go through all that. So I work on the basis of licenses. They license my trademark. They license my image. They license my voice. I become the spokesperson for the company. Have part ownership, co-founding in the company, and then they go to work with their entire. I get with companies that are very successful and have everybody in place, and I work with them and oversee what they do and approve what they do.
So you just tap your idea right into what they're already doing.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
great.
Or we elaborate on the idea, and it goes through an evolutionary process. I mean, again, Chris and I are here working in our home office. I've had the 150,000 square feet, or excuse me, 40,000 square foot offices, 150 employees. Gone through the long night of knives. We have to fire a bunch because you're not doing well at a moment. You can't afford the
Mhm,
payroll, and I don't want to go through that. And in
mhm.
this day and age, what COVID proved to a lot of people, whether it's a Zoom meeting or whatever, you can have many aspects of business and make them happen without paying for that bottom line.
Wow.
So when I make a
I like
dollar, I want to make 98% of that, 98 cents of that dollar goes as profit, not cost. That's the way I
I
like to
love
look at it.
you business dealings with Bruce Buffer. You got your online school here today. Bruce, it's been such a pleasure and honor having you
Thank
on the
you.
Behr
I'll do it again.
Essentials. I'm a fan. I'm a fan not only because you're so good at what you do, and that's from host to host. So mucho respect on that one. Just from a host to host, I know how hard it is. I know how much work's involved, how much effort,
Thank
how
you.
much energy, and getting in front of a live arena and just bringing your best and making sure everybody leaves, that event, that moment with you, giving them 110%. So I respect that so much. But
Thank you.
you're just a great personality and you're a great businessman. So I found that really inspiring and I've learned a lot from you. So thank you so much for being on
Thank
the
you,
show.
Dani. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. I'm happy to come on again at some time. But
I'm going to
um,
come and see you in the octagon. How about that?
yeah, there you go. That's
Bring
the
my
name of the game.
boy and yeah, we'll come and see you there.
That's the name of the game. It's the most exciting show on earth. And the show's not
Brilliant.
about me, it's about the fighters. I just go in and do my job, get it done.
Well, you heard it here first. Bruce Buffer, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, thank you for watching and listening to today's special episode of the Behr Essentials, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Danny. Big cheers and no fears forever. Thank you.
Thank you.